What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Go Long Show. I'm Tyler Dunn here with Jim Monis. Go Long at golongtd.com. We're also on Substack. Right in your email inbox. Fueled completely by our readers over at the site. And when it comes to the Go Long Show, Jim, we've got to thank our good friends at Fatty Beer, Orchard Park, Hamburg, downtown, Kenmore, Tonawanda, way out there in Columbus as well. They're everywhere. And what a better time. Hey, it's getting a little colder out there. Grab your seasonals. I didn't like porters for the longest time. I think we've covered this in years past, Jim. Starting to become porter season, right? It's getting a little colder. I like it.
I always felt like with beer, it's like wine. There's no right answer. It's what you like. And if it's not your thing, you don't have to drink it because of the season. Like you don't have to drink red wine with steak. Yes, it's great if you do, but if you don't like red wine, you don't have to do that. So it's okay, Tyler. You can back off on the porter.
All right. I like it.
Um,
There are going to
yeah,
be some teams, I think, in the AFC that may need to drown themselves in alcohol pretty soon. This conference is just getting funky. I think we need to kind of take a heat check and realize, all right, figure out, I should say, which teams are contenders, which teams could realistically win this thing, and which teams are going to fade away. It was a strange weekend again in that conference.
It makes me think what teams are drinking porter. A heavy amount of porter last night.
10%ers.
Yeah, the first team that came to my mind, not that they're a playoff team, but the team that needs to continue to drink is Carolina, the porter. That's not a real team, but we'll get into that. But yeah, Tyler, I think the AFC has become different than a couple weeks ago, even when we did our little mid-season kind of where's everybody at. All of a sudden, we're looking at possibilities of the Chargers not making the playoffs, which means Herbert and Burrow's injury. We're losing some big-time quarterbacks right now in the AFC, which we talk about. How do you get past that hill, that mountain of quarterbacks right there? Two aren't playing. So now if you're the Bills, any team, the key is get in. It's just get in the playoffs, however you can get in at this point, because it's Lamar, it's Josh, it's Mahomes, and everybody else. And as long as the Bills have Josh Allen healthy, if they can find a way to get in, they're going to be one of the teams that are going to be fighting for the Super Bowl, just like we talked about. Hard to believe, but when you're eliminating Burrow and Herbert, you're opening the door for other people.
We probably should start there with the Bills. Obviously, we're here in Western New York. We feel that gravitational pull to Bills talk. We haven't done a pod in a while. Admittedly, got a little crazy busy. You know, it's always the balance with Go Long, Jim, over at the site, because it's a long form site. I want to chip away at stories, you know, the deep dives on teams and player profiles, and to travel around the country, sit down with these guys, then transcribe everything, map out a story, write a story. I want to make sure, you know, we're investing the time that our readers deserve, you know, when they invest in the site. So that can take a week, 2, 3, and every so often during the course of a season, I just need to kind of hit pause. So last week I told Jim, all right, we're just going to have to hit pause on the Go Long Show for a week because I'm grinding. I'm trying to think of a better verb, but God, I hate rise and grind. Isn't that the worst?
You know, Tyler, we tried to get rid of that word in when we were in the NFL.
Yeah, too. I got to do 15 push-ups for even thinking about that word.
You're good. You dropped the pick.
Yeah. Hey, what can you do? You know, it's 6:57 a.m. I'm one coffee in. I'll work on it. But yes, that's why you didn't get a podcast last week, everyone. But we're back. We're here. And it was definitely probably not the best week for us to miss a podcast, because a lot of shit went down here in Orchard Park with the Buffalo Bills. Ken Dorsey canned by Sean McDermott. Joe Brady elevated, 34-year-old interim offensive coordinator. His past has been well documented. He worked with Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, and, you know, basically an NFL team at LSU. Did a hell of a job. You got to give him credit. He had a say in all that. Didn't go so well with the Carolina Panthers. So then I believe right when Brian Daboll went to the New York Giants, Ken Dorsey's elevated offensive coordinator. They bring in Joe Brady, and now Dorsey's out. Brady's in, because obviously if you have 4 turnovers on offense, that's coaching. And if you have 12 men on the field on a kick that misses, which gives that team an opportunity at another kick, that's obviously on the offensive coordinator too. So I kind of threw out there that it was unbelievably weak and predictable. And there were a lot of people that agreed, but there were a lot of people that disagreed. And I get it. Look, Ken Dorsey is not the second coming of Bill Walsh. Okay. That's obvious. This has not been a smooth season for the offense. That's obvious. It just did seem at that time like a peculiar, weak move to assign blame yet again to somebody else. That being said, against a good Jets defense and I don't honestly, Jim, I don't know if Zach Wilson gets a nod from the XFL at this point. I mean, really, in our chat, Colin brought that up because I think that Zach could benefit from going to the XFL. I don't really think a roster would take him. So it's not a real football offense over there with the Jets. They have conceded. Robert Saleh has decided to wave the white flag. We hate you, defense. We literally hate you, and we don't want to win games. We're going to continue to trot out a quarterback who isn't just the worst quarterback in the NFL. He's one of the worst quarterbacks we've seen play this many games ever. But it's a good defense. And the offense looked pretty good for Buffalo. I don't think it's time to, have the confetti rain upon all of Western New York. It's the Jets. But you got Philly, Kansas City coming in hot, sandwiched around a bye. We're going to learn a lot about Joe Brady and the Bills now. But anyways, I kind of was rambling on and on. Jim, what were your thoughts? Because you've been hitting on this. I mean, you more than anybody locally that I know. And of course, you worked in personnel with the Bills, scout with the Saints, scout with the Eagles, all of this. So you know more than anybody with access to a social media account. That is always funny to me. What do you know? Well, yeah, James knows quite a bit. He's been in front offices. But what was your take on the firing of Ken Dorsey? Because you pointed out that this offense actually has been fine most of the season.
That to me sounds like some type of whatever McDermott wants the offense, however he wants it to look like, it wasn't happening for him. Whatever that was, it wasn't based on the body of work. The body of work was fine, but it was something else missing, whether it was the leadership, whether it was that energy that you see Joe Brady's going to try to bring that you keep hearing everybody talk about, which will go away if they don't score touchdowns. But it's all good right now. Good week to do it. You're not going to get tested on defense. So it's offense. You just got to show up. Don't turn the ball over, which that one interception, who cared about? Right. Didn't matter. And I thought that was a good week. It's a good week to do it. Hey, let's get right. Division Jets, we just lost. That would be my question, Tyler. Would that move have happened if they didn't lose that game? Because that opened the door. That's kind of the big question to me. Because
that's the timing of it is a little hysterical. Like if you don't have 12 men on the field, he's not fired.
Funny. Because win or lose, it should happen. Like if that's the move you want to make, the win or loss shouldn't have mattered. Like you just make that move. So anyway, but I didn't notice much. You would maybe notice more on the offense. If you notice anything look different than what it's looked like, I can't say. I know they took some shots, right? Did you see different players getting involved? Like, that's usually when you see a new coordinator, you see different players get involved, guys that he wants to see in certain roles. So it does provide a new wrinkle to, the Eagles, Chiefs, teams they have coming up.
I think that, there were 29 targets in all to receivers. Stephon Diggs still got his 8, but I think it was impressive and noticeable that other players got involved. Khalil Shakir is the guy. I think Khalil Shakir has kind of been this wild card all along. We're thinking it might be Deontay Hardy. We're thinking Trent Sherfield. They need a third wide receiver to emerge to really allow you to spread things out, I think. Isaiah McKenzie was really open about it on the show where he wins that slot job ahead of the 2022 season. and he's thinking he's going to play that Cole Beasley role. Isaiah did have some drops. Then he had the concussion, and he returned too soon from the concussion. So, that's all baked into it as well. But they basically, with Ken Dorsey, eliminated the slot receiver position. And if they were going to do something with anybody in there, they just moved Stephon Diggs inside and fed him. I think that if you're going to criticize Dorsey, that's it, right? Like you need that safety blanket, somebody underneath the defense that is going to give Josh Allen a safety valve, because you don't want to change Josh Allen. It's about the most idiotic thing you could possibly do, but you can create an infrastructure where he'll be less inclined to maybe take that shot, that needless shot, into heavy traffic. That's exactly what Brett Favre talked about a ton on the show. Like, nobody resembles Allen and vice versa like Brett Favre. And you pointed out those numbers. It's eerie how similar the statistics are at this point of their careers. But that's really what Holmgren would do is, okay, I know Brett Favre, if I call a play, even if the first option isn't a receiver 50 yards deep, if that route is part of the concept, if it's in it, he's going to take the shot. So we're just not going to call that. So that's kind of the version for Josh Allen, is have somebody underneath the defense available right in front of him. And that's what you saw, I think, against the Jets. He was okay, constantly taking that throw. Khalil Shakir did have the 81-yarder that busted the game wide open, but Dalton Kincaid, he had 6 catches for 46. Ty Johnson had 3 for 47, the former Jet. James Cook, 3 for 29. Diggs only had 27 receiving yards, and the offense went nuts. That's the story.
Yeah, because when the Eagles and Chiefs come, you're going to need Diggs. It's okay. That's the good thing, to be able to use other guys in games that you have control of, or you're going to need Diggs plenty. That's not going away.
17 carries for James Cook, 10 for Latavius Murray.
Do you like the way that looked? I thought that may have looked the best that we've seen as far as the combo. It didn't look forced. It looked like it was kind of, they fed off each other a little bit, because they do have different styles. To have those two guys, to be able to use both of them, is always nice when you have different styles. I always like that in New Orleans with us. We always had different style backs, bringing them in, but they always, it gives the defense a headache.
What nobody's going to talk about nearly enough this week, too, is the offensive line. It's not a fun, exciting thing to talk about, but they only hit Allen 4 times. They only sacked him once.
That's the defense that embarrasses every quarterback.
Right. Robert Saleh told us they're embarrassing every quarterback.
You know what sucks when you say something like that is he was kind of right when he said that. He was right. Like, when you looked at the numbers, but you're never going to let it go. Like, it's never going to, now it's going to come up. Like, I just brought it up for no reason, but I thought it was good that is good for the Bills to see, when you can protect against that, the way the Jets get after the quarterback, to be able to protect Josh in that scenario, that gives you confidence heading into the big boy schedule coming up.
I think that's why we really can't devote a full hour to this game, because it's hard to really have an opinion either way. The Bills are 6-5. They just got through the quote unquote soft stretch of their schedule, and now the gauntlet's ahead. You've got Philly in Philly, excuse me, Philly in Philly, and then a bye week. And then you're in Kansas City. Then you're hosting the Dallas Cowboys, who look, granted, like you said, they didn't necessarily play world beaters in Carolina, but they look really good. Cowboys at home. At the Chargers, they're a team that's, busting at the seams, but you still have Justin Herbert.
You have to show up.
The Patriots at home, you think that's a win, even though they did beat you earlier in the season, and then at Miami. So really only one game is like, okay, yeah, they'll take care of business there in New England. The rest are going to be up in the air. They're going to be difficult. I think we're going to learn everything we need to learn. Maybe right out of the chute with these first 2 games.
And I think, remember, it's like this for a lot of teams, not just Buffalo. We're focused on Buffalo, but a lot of teams right now are in that scenario where That's why things shake. That's why these take different turns. These scenarios take different turns
Yeah.
because the wins and losses of every game now affect your playoff scenario. So you see things change weekly based on a win or a loss now. So this is what you're in it for. The league has it right. There are very few teams feeling comfortable right now.
Right now, do you think the Buffalo Bills make the playoffs?
Yeah, I have to stick with that. I do. That's just based off of the great quarterbacks. They find ways. They're always in the playoffs. No matter what, they're in the playoffs. Whether or not they win the Super Bowl or not, they're in the playoffs. So I'm just going on percentages on what I believe in with Josh Allen. I think they get in. If you're going to ask me how they get in, I can't predict that yet. Now, if I could do that, that's another show. Like if I could tell you exactly who they're going to beat, who they're going to lose to, I would love to know that too. But it can play out. They can still fight and get in.
That's the thing. I feel a lot better about their chances of getting in and winning a game or two if they had a different schedule ahead. I mean, this is going to be tough. You know, they played one good quarterback the last 6 games, Joe Burrow. That's it.
Yeah,
They haven't faced a Jalen Hurts, a Patrick Mahomes,
Herbert,
Tua Tagovailoa,
Tua,
Herbert,
Dak. The way that offense is
Dak.
playing.
I was forgetting somebody. You're catching teams, it seems right now at the wrong time. A lot can happen week to week. So I'm not sure how to answer my own question, but let's look at the AFC this episode, Jim, and figure out, okay.
Well, Baltimore has clearly, Baltimore and Kansas City are clearly the two front runners, right? I mean, you would agree with that. That's not anything tuning into the show to hear Baltimore and KC are good. But what I love about Baltimore, to touch on them quickly, what I'm seeing the difference in for the first time in years, you see other guys that that are faster than Lamar Jackson on their offense. You're seeing players all over that offense that can run and make plays. It's not just Lamar. It's not just the tight end Andrews, which they're going to miss. They're going to miss big. That's their number one. But they'll figure, hey, great teams, great quarterbacks, they figure that out. I like the way that offense looks. And for the first time, the defense is healthy for Baltimore in years. So that's all seems to come together for Baltimore. Kansas City's doing their thing that they do every year. The defense is better than it's been. They're still working on things on offense on Kansas City. Don't forget that. They're not happy either. Like they're not completely happy yet with where they are. So the AFC, then after that, it's wide open. Wide open.
It's worth mentioning to Baltimore and how they are always evolving under John Harbaugh, right? Like they just find a way to go.
And how they draft. They drafted these guys. Some of these Zay Flowers, the running back is flying around the field. Mitchell.
Keaton Mitchell wasn't even drafted.
Not even drafted.
So, I mean, start there. That was one of our features at Go Along ahead of the draft. I spoke with him for an hour or so. And I don't look, I'm no scout, and I've definitely missed on some of these guys, but I remember talking to him and watching some games. I'm thinking he should at least be drafted, like 4th round, 5th round. He can fly. I mean, this is a home run hitter in a big play league. I was shocked that he wasn't drafted by anybody. So leave it to Eric DeCosta, John Harbaugh to find him, pair him with Lamar Jackson as a 4th, 5th running back on your depth chart, just stashed away, and now he's unleashed. So in case you missed that story, a couple things that he said. I asked him, who should we expect when the ball's in your hands? And he pointed to somebody else who came from East Carolina, Chris Johnson.
It's hard not to think when you hear that school.
Chris Johnson for sure. I like LaDainian Tomlinson. LT is smooth with it. All of us, that first person you see, he's not tackling us. That's our mentality. I'm the next me. I'm that. They can compare me to him, speed or whatever. We symbolize each other. Go ahead. Throw that in there. When you get the hole, when you see the end zone, it's over with. And he kind of runs that way. So Gus Edwards, Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Odell, they'll be fine without Mark Andrews on offense. But to go from like Joe Flacco in a traditional offense to drafting Lamar after Hayden Hurst, as you remind us, right?
I don't mind.
I know.
I still can't get over it. I still can't get over that.
But then it did take guts to just completely throw out your playbook.
It does.
Build everything around Lamar Jackson. Greg Roman, we poke fun, but he deserves credit. At the line of scrimmage, he knows what he's doing. He's as good as it gets with blocking schemes and all that, and it showed. So for that time, it was perfect for Greg Roman to be the offensive coordinator, Lamar Jackson the quarterback. Remember, why am I drawing a blank? Alabama running back, Heisman Trophy winner.
Not Ingram.
Yeah, Mark Ingram. He even goes for 1,000 yards. So everything's great. It gets stale. It runs its course, and they probably pivoted a year or two, probably a year too late, but they did. I mean, they did make the move. Out's Roman, in's Todd Monken. They probably paid a little too much for Odell, but you draft Flowers, you pay Lamar, finally. Look, they caught a lot of hell, including on this show, for how they dealt with Lamar Jackson, but they got it done, and that's what matters most.
That's what mattered most.
Even on defense. I mean, Wink Martindale, he loves to blitz, right? He gets a little crazy with it. Chaotic. Bodies flying all the different directions. It was great for a while. They kind of had to evolve there too. And so I believe it's Mike McDonald, right? Their defensive coordinator. It's a little less blitz heavy and more discipline, and it's better. Like they made a change and it worked.
And keeping on the AFC topic with Baltimore, the teams like Jacksonville, who we thought for sure were going to take that step this year, they have not. Houston, certainly, nobody wants to play Houston right now, but they're not, it's still a rookie quarterback. So you still feel confident in those, beating those teams. I'm saying it literally is. Buffalo needs to find a way to beat Philly right now. You're in that mode. Like, hey, let's get this win and then see what happens, because it's a good time to play Philly. You're getting Philly off of this game tonight, Monday Night Football. Philly's in Kansas City. So they're coming back playing on a short week against a hungry Bills team.
Right.
It's a good shot for the Bills to get them.
It's a really good point. Their secondary, with all due respect to Reid Blankenship, the ghost, as he told us, who was discarded and ignored and banished by Nick Saban when he wanted to be an Alabama Crimson Tide, despite the presence of one Reid Blankenship. This is a secondary that you can take advantage of, I think.
Yeah, it seems like it has. I mean, it's proven that they haven't. It's not like they've been locked down.
I got to push back on Jacksonville, though. Come on now. That's the Super Bowl pick here. You're giving up on the Jags.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, they're still obviously in the mix. I was looking for a little bit more from them this year. I almost feel like they kind of evened out. Like they hit I was looking for that next step where Trevor, there's still inconsistencies with him when you watch him. You still see the superstar throws that nobody else very few people make, but he's not getting the ball in the end zone. He's not finishing drives. He's still having turnovers that don't make sense. Like, that's the stuff that worries me with him. I still believe in him. I still think he's a good enough quarterback. Is he good enough to beat the big boys? You feel like he could be.
Well, I think it's noteworthy that this is when he really turned the corner last year.
It's true.
There could be.
When you want to play. So this is when you want to start playing.
They started finding some answers offensively right around now, last year. It's turned it on. And I think they might have found some answers. I get it. It's the Titans. And we got to slow our roll talking about some of these other AFC teams.
They're not. Titans aren't good on defense, and Levis is not close.
But it had to have been refreshing after that beatdown that you took by the 49ers to Let me just pull this up. I didn't watch the game in full. I was kind of red zoning in that slot, but yeah, I mean, Trevor Lawrence went 24-32 for 262, 2 touchdowns. They ran for $128. I think Calvin Ridley going off
It's
probably
it's
has
the
you
week
more excited
before.
than anything. It's been such a strange year for him.
Strange. It was the week before. That 49er game was the game that put me in a bad mood with Jacksonville for other reasons that we probably know about. But you can't, coming off a bye week like that, having San Fran come to you and delay an egg, that's surprising. I think that's the part that was surprising. But hey, bounce back, took care of business yesterday, so all is good.
I do think that Lawrence is in that class, though. I think
agree.
that we
I do
can
think
put him
he
there
is.
with
He is passing the football. He can throw with those guys. Like he can make the throws that those guys make. But there's more to it.
yeah.
Like it's that next step where when you get a turnover, you're scoring a touchdown. Don't settle for a field goal.
Which would be troublesome if you're still having that conversation 3 years into his career and you're the first overall pick. I can remember talking to Press Taylor, the OC, about that, and it's like a more gentle version of what Sean McDermott was saying in March. Like Sean McDermott just is on NFL Network saying that Josh Allen needs to change his play style. Basically needs to inherently change who he is as a quarterback. Still bizarre. It was so refreshing during the Bills game to see signs up. I think one fan had a sign that said, "Let Josh Allen be Josh Allen." There it is. Like,
I think
anyways,
the most intriguing thing that has come for me for this year is the pressure stat that Ed Oliver has now made the number one stat in football. I've never heard of pressures being the number one stat ever talked about a player, except for Mike Mamula. A long time ago, Philadelphia Eagles asked Bob about Mike Mamula.
Oh yeah, I remember the.
Okay, I didn't know if that was too young. I didn't know if that was too old for you, but he became famous for where he was selected, but never getting sacks, just getting pressures. I think it was quarterback hits. Mamula might have been famous for back then. I just love when these, the pressure stat, like he puts pressure on Russell Wilson and Russell's running 10 yards down the field. Like that's where pressure, finish the play. Like pressures are good.
Yeah, finishing does matter. Yeah.
Finishing matters. Like those short arms, that's why you don't finish for Ed Oliver a lot of times. You're winning the quickness battle, but you got to finish that thing too. That's why I said that to really track pressures, when you get credit for a pressure, you have to look at that play and see what was the result of that play. Because the pressure, you can get pressure and the guy can complete a 25-yard pass. Anyway, that has taken on a life this year. But I will say it's nice to see Ed Oliver show up for them. I mean, they have to be happy with that.
Well, he is always good for a penalty. So if you're playing the Ed Oliver drinking game, I hope you're doing okay this morning. That was a body slam.
Yeah.
And hey, I think that those should once in a while be like old school football. Probably didn't need to pile drive him to that extent. Probably didn't need to do that. But what I was going to say is, like, with Trevor Lawrence, why I think he's close. What Press Taylor said is, we just from time to time tell him, be Clark Kent, not Superman. Like, to your point, there's no need to throw across your body in the red zone like he did against Denver and London last year. Like, there's just whatever the pick is, whatever the turnover is, like, just if he can eliminate that, he can make every throw.
Oh yeah,
he does have the weapons around him. They can run the ball. This defense is really interesting. Have you watched how the Jaguars play defense? They stay in base. They don't sub out a lot of times. They'll just keep a linebacker in there.
I always want to give them credit as a team that I think is going to be a little bit better than they are on defense. Every time it's the 49er game that bothers me still from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it should.
To make it look that easy, for them to go in there and make it look easy that's strange. But that's one game. It happens. I mean, we talk about it all the time. One game, move on from it. So they have.
Here's the thing, though. So they've got in the AFC South, the Texans did beat Jacksonville, but Jacksonville was a game up. So this is a huge game at Houston this Sunday. And then you've got the Bengals Burrow-less, and then you have the Browns, Watson-less with, maybe the best defense in football, but DTR didn't necessarily inspire hope. I mean, we haven't talked about the Browns for a reason, I suppose.
We
Then
can
you've got
talk
the
about
Ravens, and then the Bucks. The Bucks don't look good. Carlton Davis, I know you're pretty psyched about that defense. Not a lot of resistance from that defense this year. Then the
no.
Panthers. So, I mean, unbelievably winnable games for Jacksonville. I mean, the Ravens will be tough, but I could easily see them winning every other game.
You brought up Cleveland. The only thing I want to mention with Cleveland is I hope Myles Garrett can somehow get into this MVP race. It's the right thing to do this year. It's just not a quarterback MVP year unless you want to give it to Lamar. If they finish strong, if they just dominate down the stretch, and unless one of these quarterbacks takes over, it'd be nice to see Garrett, or like we said before, TJ Watt, one of those guys that.
Why is that? Why doesn't everybody just says, well, it's a quarterback award, so it has to be a quarterback? But no, it doesn't have to.
No, those teams are we talked about it. The Bizarro World Seinfeld teams, like those teams are good because of Watt and because of Garrett, just like the other teams are good because of Mahomes, because of Josh Allen. They're the quarterback of those teams, so they deserve to be in the mix. Makes no sense.
Myles Garrett is at 13 sacks through 10 games. So who knows? Could flirt with the sack record. 4 forced fumbles, 23 quarterback hits, Jim's favorite stat. I think it's the eyeball test, right? Like if you just watch a Browns game, like he is the most valuable player for that team, clearly.
You could just
there is no chance they're 7-3 without Myles Garrett. So that's the question. If you don't have Myles Garrett, what's their record?
Yeah, any team that plays the Browns, any offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, ask how they prepare for the Browns. It would just be like preparing for it'd be like preparing for Tyreek Hill as a defensive coordinator. How do you stop him?
Man.
So,
is it worth talking about the Browns? I mean, should they be considered a team to be afraid of at all in the AFC?
Yes, because defense keeps you in every game. So then anything can happen. So yes, anytime you have a defense, that means you're in the game. I don't see how these quarterbacks would ever be good enough. Another guy we talked about briefly last time we did the pod, because you did the story on Sam Howell. Like, that's my point. Like a game like yesterday with Washington, that's unacceptable. Like, that Giants defense hasn't been good all year. How does that happen? Like, that's the difference between, and I'm not trying to nitpick, but that's what separates the quarterbacks. Like, you can't have that happen. Can't be on you. Can't be on you.
3 interceptions. Doesn't really matter if you're leading the league in passing yards.
That's why
he gave the game away to an inferior opponent.
Exactly. But I'm not trying to knock him. I'm trying to just say the gap between. I don't want to come across it because I do like what Sam Howell's done. I want the gap between the true quarterbacks and the guys that are system quarterbacks.
It's crazy when you look at the Browns' schedule. So they're 7-3. The first game against Pittsburgh, remember in week 2, there was 2 defensive touchdowns for Pittsburgh. So there's a game that Deshaun Watson just handed. They lost in some just crushing fashion to the Seattle Seahawks with those plays at the end. I mean, they easily could be 9-1 right now with D+ to D quarterback play.
Yeah, it wasn't like Watson was playing well.
No. And even lest we forget that Nick Chubb had that horrific injury in week 2. You haven't had the player who makes everything go on offense.
Agree.
I mean, I think Kevin Stefanski at bare minimum has saved his job and then some. They've got this albatross of a Watson contract, which you're stuck with him. There's nothing they can do with him. Mm-hmm. You're stuck.
That's all right. They knew that when they did it.
Yeah, don't feel any sympathy, obviously, for the Browns with that one. But look at their schedule. I know we could probably do this with a lot of teams, but this looks like it looks. I think they're going to sneak into the playoffs. You've got at Denver, at the Rams, home against the Jaguars, home against the Bears, at the Texans, home against the Jets, at the Bengals. Like
They're really
I
good.
think
They're a
they'll
good
get to
team.
10 wins. They'll get to 10. They'll win 3 out of there.
Nobody's going to want to play them. You don't want to play teams that play defense.
I kind of bring all of these different teams up too, Jim, because I think if you're a Bills fan listening to this podcast, that's where you're a little worried. As good as Josh Allen looked, as different as this offense looked with Joe Brady, when you look at the games ahead for the Bills and the ground that they have to make up still, and then you look at some of these teams that have a little bit of a head start, like Cleveland, and you look at that schedule, I think the Bills are going to be surpassing Cleveland. Jacksonville, Houston could both get in. My Pittsburgh Steelers. Do we dare talk about the Steelers?
Yeah, we talk about them the same way we talk about them every week. They're doing some amazing things with a backup quarterback. Coach, you give him Coach of the Year, whatever. That's incredible what they do.
Kenny Pickett.
I've been trying. I keep trying. I don't see it.
Well, frustration is boiling over. For those who missed it, Najee Harris had a few things to say after the game. Did you catch this, Jim?
I did not.
Let's just pull it up. Yeah, so he said he's quote unquote tired of the Steelers struggles. There's just a lot of stuff that goes around that you guys don't see, Najee Harris said. I guess I'm trying to say I'm just at a point where I'm just tired of this shit. So Najee Harris, not holding back. Quote, you could do 2 things, he said. You could look at the record and say, okay, we're still good right now. Or we could look at the record and be like, if we keep playing this type of football, how long is this shit going to last? I look at it like, how long is this shit going to last? Y'all could look at it like it's a good record, but I mean, it's the NFL. Winning how we did, it's not going to get us nowhere. Hard to argue with the points from one Najee Harris. I tend to look for the beauty, in these wins, these ugly wins like they had against Green Bay 2 weeks prior. But
right, he's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get where if your goal is the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you're faking.
Something's got to click on offense.
Yeah, you're faking yourself playing like this. It's a lot of teams are. Carolina, Jets. You're anybody on defense. You got the Steelers players on defense that don't say anything. That's impressive. That's Najee Harris saying it because he feels it on offense. They have to look those guys in the face. It's hard.
Well, here's your stat of the day, Jim. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have scored 166 points this season. Only 2 teams in the entire NFL have scored less than that. That would be the New York Giants. I should say the New York Zombie Giants, down to Tommy DeVito. They're at 149. And the Carolina Panthers, which you referred to as not a real football team, at 163. So offensively, those are the only 2 teams you've scored more points than. Maybe that's what you need if you're the Steelers. You need a player, a starter, just calling this out. Because it's ugly. I tried watching that game, and it was hard, man.
So when you watch Josh Dobbs play for Minnesota and you watch DeVito play for the Giants, this is my point on stop blaming offensive lines, stop blaming everything. Why are these guys able to come in with no knowledge of the offense and their teams have success? That's my point. How can the Giants look better with DeVito than they do Daniel Jones? That's a Daniel Jones issue. Like, that's not like that's my issue. I don't think it's always like, yeah, Jones, they don't have great protection for Daniel Jones. Nobody else does either. Like, let the quarterbacks make plays. Like, that's what they're paid to do. Don't baby these guys. And I like when I see DeVito do that, that's pretty cool. Like, he was getting a hard think. If you're the Jets, wouldn't you rather have DeVito right now than Zach Wilson? In a heartbeat.
You just took the words out of my mouth. It blows my mind to zoom out and compare the Jets quarterback situation to anybody else. Like, you're not even trying. Like, is the goal that Zach Wilson somehow keeps you in this discussion that we're having until Aaron Rodgers, has this miracle recovery, maybe ayahuasca, who the hell knows what he's taken to cure this Achilles. That's what you're holding out your hope for? That he'll keep you at 500, and then Aaron comes back and saves the day. Like, okay, even if the goal is to win games and to be productive as an offense, oh man, that was pathetic. I mean, he's falling down on his ass as he's like listening to the play call. Did you see that? Like he's backpedaling and just falls down.
That's tough. It's tough. It's tough to give confidence to the team after that.
You can't tell me that there isn't anybody, like literally anybody. So Joe Flacco's getting a look, right? Like Joe Flacco is.
There's got to be more. Yeah, Tyler, there's got to be more to this.
Matt Ryan.
I think we talked about it. Something came from up top that Zach Wilson's playing. There's no coach that would keep putting him out there. I
think you're right. I think we do get conspiracy theory on this.
No coach would do that to especially when your defense is good enough. If the quarterback doesn't turn it over, gets at least 1 or 2 first downs. I mean, but we talked about that second week of the season. Zach Wilson's not good enough. That was on them.
You've exhausted your second overall pick. It's over. Like you exhausted it midway through last year.
Yes.
When he stood there and refused to take any blame for an abomination of a performance against the Patriots, right? Like if he can't see it, that's what's troubling. It doesn't seem like Zach Wilson even understands how bad it is out there. When he got benched finally for Mike White, right? Or who the hell? No, Tim Boyle. I'm getting everybody confused. Mike White's down in Miami now. Right? Yeah, that's right. One of the 29 players that you had to sign when you fired Aaron Rodgers.
That 6 degrees of separation for Kevin Bacon. That game. Everybody would play that actor, Kevin Bacon. You can always connect somebody that was in a movie with him. You could do that with the Jets quarterbacks. Connect who are the backup quarterbacks that have been with the Jets. Mike White, Tommy Boyle, Joe Flacco. Who has tried to replace Zach Wilson in the last?
Isn't it wild though? Like Wilson is the conversation around the New York Jets. It begins and ends with Zach Wilson and how just awful he is. But the dead weight that you took on when you traded for Aaron Rodgers, it's holding them back as well. I mean, Randall Cobb is a healthy scratch. Billy Turner is injured. He didn't give you anything. He's another buddy. Alan Lazard had that huge drop. They're in the red zone. They're driving. Zach Wilson actually puts it on Alan Lazard. He drops it. 4 years, $44 million for him. He's a number 4 receiver. He's maybe a number 3.
So if you're the Jets, my question would be, does Hackett get that job without Aaron Rodgers?
And Hackett is the ultimate dead weight here.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure I've seen the Denver Broncos. I'm pretty sure they're relevant right now with the same quarterback that couldn't play last year that Hackett had in Denver. I just want to know, would he have got that job without somehow he's the only guy allowed to coach Aaron Rodgers. I don't understand it. But I just all of a sudden now, like you said, you have Lazard on the team. Would Lazard have been on the team without Rodgers?
No.
And he's dropping balls. I mean, come on.
Randall Cobb should be out of the NFL. I mean, I chuckled at the Adam Schefter report Sunday morning saying that the Jets are going to make a run at Devontae Adams next year, which of course they are. But I was just wondering, do you then move Randall Cobb to a coaching position? Does he become like a GA? Quality control, wide receiver quality control. Just because you need him around, town. You need your buddy there. It's bizarre that a functional team, I mean, that's probably the end of it, right? A functional team doesn't continue to start Zach Wilson, and a functional team doesn't just sign players because your quarterback needs his buddies around. I mean, it'd be one thing if if Randall Cobb warranted a roster spot, he does not. If Lazard warranted 44 mil, he does not. Billy Turner was no good. And then number one is Nathaniel Hackett, who we all love as a person, his personality, energetic. If you've met him, he's got that magnetic aura to him. I get it. What are we seeing on the field? Not a hell of a lot.
Inept.
Hey,
Just like
speaking of
Denver
Nathaniel
was.
Hackett, Sean Payton turning it on with the Denver Broncos.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's just look. It's right there in front of you. The proof of what coaching matters. I don't think coaches win games. They can lose games.
Before we close up shop, I mean, what did you make of last night's game? Broncos thrilling fashion over Cortland Sutton. Was it five field goals, just kind of inching their way through the game. So the Vikings, they're driving up 17-9, driving. They're poised to go up 24-9, I believe, late in the third, early fourth. Anyways, then you have a turnover. Broncos come down, kick another field goal, and the game just slipped away from them. I don't know. I still don't think that this win and this little streak that they're on catapults the Broncos into this discussion.
Mm-mm.
But they're 500. This was a team everybody thought was going to sell off any player they could. They're firmly in the hunt. The graphic is going to make its appearance Thanksgiving Day. It's going to be right there on your screen, everyone. In the hunt, the Denver Broncos will be there.
We always said, what's the first team that utters if we win out? As soon as you hear a team say, if we win out, that's when you know they're not good. If we win out, we get in. We control our own destiny. Yeah, we have to win 6 games in a row, but we control our own destiny. I make of this with Denver. They're finding ways to compete when the quarterback is still limited, but you're seeing what a coach can do to max him out. They look, at least they show up on offense. How do you kick that many field goals? How? And this is coming from obviously somebody that may have invested in Denver -1.5. Maybe 1 touchdown somewhere along the way could have helped. Anyway, to your point though, that give them credit for maybe you flip it. How do you lose to a team that kicks that many field goals? But then again, how could you get mad at Minnesota playing with a guy that's there for 3 weeks and they don't have their number one receiver? You could go ahead and put him in coach of the year for me, Minnesota.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Kevin O'Connell.
He could if he won that, he deserves to be in the mix for that.
Yeah, and if anybody is moaning injuries and upset and crying, and
Justin Jefferson's on the sideline. The quarterback was 3 weeks. He's been there for 3 weeks.
I'll give Denver this though. Boy, when they gave up 70 points, 30 first downs, 726 yards, 10.2 yards per play.
One game.
In a game that dropped you to 0-3.
Yep.
To be in that place as a team, to get this says everything about Sean Payton, right? To somehow get your players excited to wake up the next day to prepare for the next team.
Not only that, they've improved.
And improved.
They've shown, remember everybody thought their players were every week, Surtain. Everybody's going for Surtain. No. They're not in the business of getting rid of good players like that yet.
But we're probably not ready to put Denver there. So let's hear this, Jim. You can't say the Kansas City Chiefs because clearly the AFC Championship goes through Arrowhead. I love that Adam Shine calls it the Arrowhead Invitational. because they just
That's
host
good.
it every
That's
single
really
year.
good. That's really good because they do.
So,
Yeah,
they're going to host the conference championship
I
game.
like that.
You can't say Kansas City.
Mm-mm. Who can you say?
Which team gets to the Super Bowl if it's not the Chiefs?
Well, the easy pick is Baltimore. It's about health and Lamar, their situation. So I would have to go Baltimore if I had to pick one. But you know who I have picked before the season, and I'll stick with it but they have to sneak into playoffs, so it's hard for me to say. But I still think if Buffalo sneaks in, be careful. Careful that Josh
Wow.
Allen, that guy Josh Allen still is there.
Jim Monos, he's got that axe to grind. At it again, right? Just picking the
I,
Bills to get to the Super Bowl.
I just believe in that quarterback too much. I'm a sucker for a quarterback.
Yeah, with a team that has to fight some internal battles with a defensive head coach managing these games and doing some strange things. Josh Allen is so damn good. I'm with you.
That's all it is. That's all it
I'm
is.
not ready to make the leap yet. I mean, if they do it against Philly and or Kansas City, I'll probably join you and say, hey, if they get in the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised
Well,
if
that's
they
the key.
get to
If
a
they get
conference
in the
championship.
right, I don't want to pick them and then they're not even make the playoffs. But
I mean, we've never thought the offense was that much of a problem. I
no,
think it's the defense,
yeah,
and now you've got some more injuries sprinkled in there. So I can't get there yet. But Allen, yeah, he's fine. But he did throw another interception, Jim. So, whew, man, can't
fire
have
Brady, fire Brady.
that. Hail Mary interception at the end of the first half. You got to fire the OC. I don't see any other answer for that. So I'm going to go with Jacksonville. I'm sticking with
I mean,
Jacksonville.
that's a good pick. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? Like they're as good as anybody else. I'm with you on that. If you're not picking the Chiefs, they're in the mix.
And it comes back to the theme that coaching matters. I think that Doug Peterson has
Yeah,
such a feel for the ebbs and flows of a season. And similar to Andy Reid, will have his offense peaking at the right time. I think the defense has been better. San Francisco game notwithstanding, I know the defense has been better than anybody thinks. I mean, Josh Allen, I don't think he's in that Myles Garrett MVP conversation, but the other Josh Allen, Jacksonville's Josh Allen, he's been on a tear. Like you have a legitimate
I
edge
mean,
rusher the teams have to prepare for.
let's not think for a second if the Bills don't go on a run, and Josh Allen is the reason they go on a run. Josh Allen could possibly sneak into the MVP race if they're beating these teams that they're playing. And it's
You're talking about
because
the
of
Bills,
him.
Josh Allen, though.
I'm sorry about the Bills, Josh Allen. You made me think of that. If they go on this run, when you play these teams they're about to play, this is how you get into an MVP race. I don't care about nobody cares about the first half of the year. This is when it matters. So, I mean, there's always a possibility for him to get into that mix on a run. I mean, it would have to be a run, but that's the point. That's the whole point of this next part of the season. This is all the stuff that can happen now.
It could. People fail to mention that he was leading the league in passing touchdowns too, in addition to interceptions.
Tyler, no.
What about that stat? 17-1 when he runs the ball at least 10 times. This season, he hasn't run the ball 10 times once.
Well, save it for the playoffs then.
Probably need to unleash it, I would think,
At some point,
fairly soon. Yeah. Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. I know we've been bringing it up constantly. We've got to do a live show, Jim. Get some people at
Get the
Fatty.
boys at Fatty. Yeah, we'll talk to the boys, see what we can get going.
Definitely. Still have some home games here in Western New York that we'll map something out for. GoLongTD.com. All the stories right there. Working on some projects, Jim. Working on some big stories here. The timing's got to be right. But I think this might be one of, if not the biggest thing that we've worked on at Go Long. So I'll just say that and leave the tease there. Thank you so much, everyone.